Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. We apologize in the delay. It's that busy time of session, and I know you're all busy too. So the thought for today is, obviously your voice matters, and everything that you're all doing is making a difference in the state. We are back to back today, so we have about 30 bills after this that we're voting on. Again, that's not to say that your voice doesn't matter, but just in the interest of time, we're all for you, and we want to go through this as quick as possible, but still knowing that, I know that you have very important things to say. So we're just gonna get rolling. Committee members are coming in from all different committees, but in honor of your time and the people participating online or virtually, we figure we'll start the capital budget subcommittee hearings. We're going to start first with the University of Maryland, Baltimore, with Sarah Baker. And then after Ms. Baker's done, we'll have the agency response. Okay.
There are two projects that receive funding in 2024. The first is the electric substation project that will construct new substations at the north and south end of campus and upgrade the existing electrical infrastructure. The project is being completed in 4 phases, which are described at the bottom of the page and continuing next. Funding in 24 and 25 will complete the construction of the project. The other project receiving funding is the new School of Social Work. The total estimated cost of the project is $121.6 million. This has not changed since last year. And just to show you on Exhibit 1 that most of the construction funding has been shifted to 26 and 27, and the recommendation is to approve all authorizations and pre-authorizations. That concludes my.
Oh, thank you very much. That was amazing. We're Ms. Baker, have you started yet? No. Thank you very much. That was great. Please, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you to the committee for hearing from me. My name is Bruce Gerald, president of UMB. I'm joined by Ms. Dawn Rhodes, who's our chief business and finance officer and senior vice president. I want to thank Sarah for her analysis. In short, we concur with this analysis and the recommendations. We're deeply grateful to the governor and the committee for this electrical station upgrade and for the School of Social Work program. It's definitely an improvement to our campus. I'm happy to answer any questions of the subcommittee.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. President. Appreciate it. Committee will now turn our attention to the University of Maryland, College Park. Ms. Baker.
Thank you.
Ms. Baker, start whenever you're ready.
Okay, there are 5 projects in the CIP, 3 of which received funding in 2024. I just want to update you on the human health and human services. The General Assembly did add $25 million into the budget last year to build out the shell space in the new Cole Fieldhouse. In addition, $10 million was pre-authorized in 24. However, these funds were not included in the general budget, and funding to continue construction is programmed in 27. I will note the total cost of the project is about $86 million. Moving on to the engineering building, which levers $55 million from the Clark Foundation, will provide space to allow engineering programs to grow. The total cost of the project increased $9.4 million since last year due to increase in escalation rates that's applied to construction related expenditures. But I would note the estimate is based on information from over a year ago. So we asked College Park to comment on whether the established budget is sufficient to complete the project. The next project receiving funding is standalone facility renewal initiative to address critical deferred maintenance. The list of the projects funded in 24 are listed on page 5. I would note the CIP programs $12.5 million annually, but funding is put on hold in 27 and resumes in 28. The last project is the Chemistry 1 replacement, which will be completed at the end of this year. This is the last phase of renovating and replacing space for the chemistry department. And the recommendation is to approve all authorizations and pre-authorizations. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much for that fantastic analysis. Mr. President, good to see you.
Good to see you, Chair Zucker and Vice Chair McCray and members of the distinguished committee. It's an honor and privilege for me to be here. I'd first like to thank you all and the Senate and the entire General Assembly for all of the past support for the University of Maryland's flagship institution. I also like to thank Governor Moore and his new administration for the support reflected in the capital budget and the excellent analysis, of course, provided by Ms. Sarah Baker. The analysis did request a comment on whether the established budget is sufficient to complete the interdisciplinary engineering building, similar to what happened previously with our chemistry building, which experienced cost escalations due to a volatile construction market. It is possible we may need to request additional funding for the project. We will look aggressively for any and all opportunities to reduce costs, including looking at value engineering, programmatic decisions, and private fundraising. We will have an updated cost estimate this fall after we receive bid prices for the building, foundation, and structural components. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the president? Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Well,
Committee will now turn our attention to Bowie State University. It's Kelly Norton. And you can begin whenever you're ready.
Okay, there we go. Bowie State has two projects in the 2024 CIP, the Communication Arts and Humanities Building and the new Thurgood Marshall Library. The funding in the CIP for fiscal 2024 is $67.1 million in general obligation bonds. There's an update for the new Thurgood Marshall project on page 2. The summary for the Communication Arts and Humanities Building begins on page 2 as well. It will accommodate the Departments of Communications, Language, Literature, and Cultural Studies, History and Government, and ROTC. We'll replace a building with small classrooms, inadequate laboratories, lack of dedicated ROTC space, failing infrastructure, and it does not meet current codes. It is expected to be completed in August 2024 and will cost in total $167.2 million. DLS recommends approving all authorizations and changes to prior authorizations. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. President Burrow, good to see you.
Good to see you. Good afternoon, Chair Zucker and Vice Chair McCray. Very good to see you and to all the members of the committee. I also would like to acknowledge and thank Governor Westmore for his budget and his recognition of one of the priorities that's on your list, and that is our library. We're very much interested in moving that project up as we continue to grow at Bowie State University, bringing in the largest incoming class in the history of our institution. This year, we continue to see record growth, averaging about 30% over 5 years. We expect continued growth, and the learning supports, including the library, are essential to our continued success. That completes my remarks. Again, I thank you for your support of the MLK Communications and Humanities Building and for your support of our library. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First, let me again thank Ms. Norton for that analysis. I didn't get a chance to really properly thank her. Second is
to the analysts as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Second is just so are you looking for anything in particular for FY24 with the library?
Yes,
and how much?
1.5 million is what's needed in addition to the pre-authorized funds that we received.
And the pre-authorized funds, did you want to move those up?
Yes, to this fiscal year 24.
And how much was that again?
That was 3.5.
And that's in 25? I mean, that would be in
That
fiscal
would be
year
in
25?
fiscal year 24.
Then where's the 1 point?
That's an
Five.
addition, 1.5 additional in fiscal
So you
year
want 5.
24, total of 5.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Senator Benson.
It's always good to see people from my alma mater. Dr. Bro, it seems to me that there were 2 other projects that you all were concerned about that was brought to my attention. And that totaled seven.
We had 3 priorities on our list this year. One was for the Center for Law, Social Justice, and Civic Engagement, which is not a capital project. We are also seeking funds for mental health support.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam President. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Senator Benson, for your question.
Committee will now turn our attention to Towson University. Ms. Baker.
As you see, there are two projects for Towson, the Smith Hall renovation and College of Health Profession. And the recommendation is to approve all the authorization and pre-authorizations. I do have a couple of updates for you. Last session, the General Assembly added $14 million to renovate this facility of institutional well-being. This project will be completed by May and did include $500,000 of institutional funds. In addition, there was also a $5 million pre-authorization was added for the Academic Achievement Center that would provide space for athletic academic support. However, funding was not provided in 24 and is not included in the CIP. Moving on to the College of Health Professions building. This is the last year of funding to complete the facility. The budget provides $43 million in GO, which is $9.7 million more than program last year. $6 million is related to an increase in equipment due to the needs being refined based on existing equipment and additional new equipment needed for the facility. The remaining $3.7 million is due to an increase in the escalation rate applied to construction expenses. The last project is a Smith Hall renovation. The budget provides $20.8 million in GO funding, which is $17.8 million more than program in last year's CIP. And this is due to accelerating the start of construction from July 24 to this October. And so is to begin abatement, interior demolition, and general site work. Overall, the estimated cost of the project has increased $20.5 million. That is primarily due to construction inflation. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Baker, for that great analysis. Madam President.
Thank you. I'm Melanie Perot, and I am the interim president of Towson University, and it's my privilege to present our capital budget priorities today. I'd first like to echo everybody else and extend our appreciation and gratitude to Governor Moore and the General Assembly, particularly Chair Zucker and Vice Chair McRae, and the subcommittee for the support that you've all shown for higher ed in general and Towson University in particular. And thanks to DLS and to Sarah Baker for their comprehensive analysis. You have our written testimony, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Well, thank you very much for that fantastic response. Any questions? It was so thorough, no questions. I mean, got everybody breathless, you all. Thank you. Okay, seeing no questions, thank you very much. We'll now turn our attention to Salisbury University. Ms. Baker.
Okay, Salisbury has one project, and that is a Black Hall renovation. The library was formerly housed in this building, which moved to the Academic Commons in 2016. And not only will the building be fully renovated, but a two-story addition will be constructed. And once completed, all the student services will be moved to the facility, creating a one-stop shop for the students. And the recommendation is to approve the authorization. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Hey, Eli. How are you, man?
Mr. Chair.
Good to see you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair McRae, members of the subcommittee. I bring you greetings on behalf of our president, Dr. Lepre, who is in South Korea, celebrating the 10th anniversary of our partnership with Cheonam University. So we appreciate the work of DLS and Sarah Baker and are happy to answer any questions.
You didn't go?
I did not get to go.
All right. All right. I don't see any questions. Thank you very much. Good to see you. Keep in touch. Committee will now turn our attention to University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Sarah Baker.
Okay, there are UMBC has two renovation projects in the CIP, one Salmon Hall, and this is not programmed to receive funding to 28. And the recommendation is to approve the authorization and pre-authorizations. I just wanted to provide an update on the Spring Grove campus, in which the General Assembly provided $40 million for 23 to upgrade utility systems, campus infrastructure, environmental remediation. Under the lease agreement with Maryland Department of Health and UMBC, MDH will continue to operate and maintain the property for the hospital center. The lease has an initial term of 10 years with a 2-year renewal options of up to 5 years each, but also provides early termination once MDH vacates property. In the interim, UMBC is assessing and completing work on the property. UMBC is using $27 million for various projects, which are listed in the middle of the page. Their one project is Sherman Hall renovation, and UMBC used 13 of the $40 million I just discussed to pre-purchase long lead items for this project, such as rain screens, air handling units, heat exchangers, and switchgear. DBM did allow these purchases for it fell within the broad scope of the language. Total cost of the project increases $5.9 million due to the increase in the escalation rate. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Baker? Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Good to see you.
Hi, thank you.
Welcome.
And thank you to Sarah for her analysis. And good afternoon to Chair Zucker and also to Vice Chair McCray and to all of our committee members. My name is Valerie Ashby, and I'm the 7th-month-old president of the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. And delighted to be here today. Just wanted to thank you for your support of renovation of Sherman Hall, as Sarah just described. And also we appreciate the governor's inclusion of design funds for our second renovation project of Sondheim Hall. That concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Any questions? See, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Committee will now turn our attention to University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science. Ms. Baker.
UMCS has one project. This is the Chesapeake Analytic Collaborative Building. This is the last year of funding, and once it's completed, the building will provide modern research and IT space and house the library, the collection. The total cost of the project increased to $2.7 million due to increases in construction costs due to supply chain issues and labor shortages. And the recommendation is to approve the authorization. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Baker. Any questions for Ms. Baker? Okay. Mr. President, good.
Well, good afternoon, Chair Zucker, Vice Chair McCray. I'm Peter Goodwin and Senators. I'm Peter Goodwin. I serve as the president of UMCS. And I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank you for your support, along with Governor Moore, for the University System of Maryland, and particularly the unique institution that's UMCS. This building is of critical importance to our mission. It's going to enable a magnet facility, allowing us to lead multi-institutional big science initiatives. It will also enable us to serve our state agencies, the central part of the institution's mission. So we concur with the DLS recommendation to include this building in the FY 2024 capital appropriation, and thanks to Ms. Baker for her always thoughtful and detailed analysis. And we also concur with the governor's inclusion of the Coastal Dynamics Laboratory in FY 28. Given the massive impacts of sea level rise, this is obviously going to be very critical to finding innovative solutions to our coastal zones. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senator Elfreth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Goodwin, thank you so much. And I'd be remiss that he's my constituent. I just want to say, I think this might be your last budget hearing. So I want to thank you for your incredible service, not just to UMCS, but to the entire state of Maryland. We're very grateful. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Senator Elfreth. And it really has been a great honor to serve in this state. Maryland really does things right in the years that I've been here. And perhaps I could just leave you with one thought. Several of us from the University System of Maryland were in California last week, looking at accelerating science to address climate issues. And it was a real pleasure in my opening remarks, a tongue in cheek, just to say, come on, guys, you got to keep up with Maryland with the legislation that you passed last year. So it's truly been an honor and a privilege to work in this great state that punches far above its weight.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you for your years of service.
Thank you.
Committee will now turn our attention to Morgan State University. Ms. Norton.
Okay, Morgan State has 7 projects being funded in the 2024 CIP. The total for these projects in fiscal 2024 is 4.3 million in non-budgeted funds and $84.9 million in general obligation bonds for a total of $89.2 million. The summary for the fiscal 2024 funded state-owned projects begins on page 3. The first project is the new Health and Human Services Building, Phase 2. The new building will house the School for Community Health and Policy, the Prevention Sciences Research Center, the School of Social Work, the Medical Laboratory Science Program, the Department of Family and Consumer Sciences, and the University Counseling Center. In total, the project is estimated to cost $169.5 million, and the CIP has a request this year of $60.6 million in general obligation bonds. The new Science Center Phase 1 project is found on page 4. The current building is being demolished to make space for the new Science Center. $7.6 million is scheduled for fiscal 2024 and expected to be completed in November 2024. The new Science Center Phase 2 project begins on page 5. The new building will house the biology and chemistry departments and the dean's office of the School of Computer, Mathematical, and Natural Sciences. In total, the project is estimated to cost $239.4 million, and the CIP has a request this year of $10.9 million in general obligation bonds. The Patuxent Environmental and Aquatic Research Laboratory project begins on page 6. The project will expand the size of the facility. The total project is estimated to cost $7.3 million, and the CIP has a request of $6.8 million. This will include $2.5 million in general obligation bonds and $4.3 million in non-budgeted funds. The Carter Grant Wilson Building Renovation Project begins on page 7. The renovation will address insufficient space in inoperable and failing building systems. In total, the project is estimated to cost $34.6 million, and the CIP has requested this year of $1.2 million in general obligation bonds. The Lake Clifton High School demolition project is found on page 8. The current building is being demolished, and the university will create a redevelopment plan for the site. $1.1 million is scheduled for the fiscal 2024, with a total cost of $15.5 million. And expected to be completed in August 2025. The last project is the Jenkins Demolition Project. It's found on page 9. The current building is being demolished to create a green space to serve as the visual entryway to its academic quad. $1 million is scheduled for fiscal 2024, with a total cost of $14.3 million and expected to be completed in July 2026. The summary of the out-year projects are on page 10 through 12, and the DLS recommended action is to approve all authorizations and changes to prior authorizations, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much for that fantastic analysis. President Wilson, welcome.
Thank you very much, Chair Zucker and Vice Chair McCray. I think I really have to bring my remarks in about 2 or 3 sentences today, right? But I really want to express my appreciation to Governor Moore, to this committee for his strong support of Morgan State University. Just have a couple of observations. First, we appreciate the $89 million that has been allocated for the various capital projects that we have in place. We are in need of an additional $42 million in order to keep those projects moving both on budget and on time. And second, I just want to briefly respond to the key observation on the part of the analyst, whom we thank very much. And the observation was that we are receiving the highest amount of state capital funding of all of the public institutions in the CIP this year. Yes, we are very, very pleased with that kind of investment. But the reason for that, as this committee and the General Assembly know, is because Morgan has been the most invested institution, public institution in our state. That is no secret. You could pick up the Baltimore Sun on yesterday, and that was the front page article as well. And so we do expect and hope that this period that we're in, where we're just simply trying to catch up, is not as if we are in a period right now where we feel we are competitive facilities wise with our sister institutions. We're just trying to catch up for the past, that we will stay at this point going forward. And then last, we were fortunate to have closed on the Lake Clifton property last week. And now the 59 acres is the largest real acquisition of property in Morgan's history. And you'll be hearing more from us as to how we plan to develop that particular site over the coming years. Chairs, that is my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the president? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. President. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Secretary Strickland, you here? Good. Come on up. I was so interested in making sure that I kept on Sarah Baker's good side that I took her all, I took all of her folks at once. So why don't we have Samantha Tapia come up and good to see you, Mr. Secretary. We're first going to hear from the analyst, but I just want to
Okay.
make sure that we got you, and we have one more after you, but yeah, didn't mean to skip you, but thank you very much. Please go whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Again, Samantha Tapia presenting the capital analysis from Maryland Department of Emergency Management. On page 1, you can see that there is only one project in the CIP. That is the renovation of the department headquarters at Camp Frederick. The project includes renovations and expansions to accommodate more staff and provide more operational space. There's a funding table on page 3 that shows that project funding prior to fiscal 2024 was primarily through PAYGO general funds at approximately 9.1 million of a total 10.7 million. Go bond funding scheduled in fiscal 2024 is now 7.95 million and 9 million in the final project year fiscal 2025. The total cost projected as of the session 2022 CIP was 23.1 million and is now estimated at 27.6 million, primarily after inclusion of an upgrade to the department audiovisual and communication systems. DLS recommends approving the Go bond authorization for the project. Next, we'll look at the grant and loan programs. I'll refer to the committee to the operating analysis and the recent resiliency briefing for further information on the grant programs. But during that briefing, the agency also discussed the Resilient Maryland Revolving Loan Fund. And you can see a graph of funding on page 1 of the analysis. And a table of funding on page 4. The loan fund was established in response to the Federal Storm Act of 2021 to provide capitalization grants to support hazard mitigation projects, with 10% of the project costs covered by the state and the other 90% covered by the federal government. 25 million was appropriated to the loan fund in fiscal 2023, but delays in the federal funding schedule have also delayed the issuing of loans through the state's loan fund. The deadline for local project submissions was February 17th, 2023, and the deadline for the department to submit the first group of applications for federal funding is April 28th this year. There's been some committee and public interest in the distribution of disaster assistance grants and concerns about access to grants. Given that the information required for project funding applications must be submitted for federal review and approval, DLS recommended committee narrative requesting that the same information be compiled for submission to the committees. And that concludes my presentation. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much for that fantastic analysis. Any questions? See any? Secretary, thank you very much for your patience. Please, the floor is yours, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. And for the record, I'm Russell Strickland, Secretary of the Department of Emergency Management. And we'd like to thank both our DBM and DLS analysts for their job on this. And we've submitted written testimony. If you have any questions, we're more than happy to answer it. And I have staff here that can go into detail if you need such detail.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. I don't see any questions. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, sir.
Committee will now turn our attention to the Maryland Independent Colleges and University Association, the CUA. We'll start out with Sam McQuist, and then we'll hear from President Power. Mr. Quist, just begin whenever you're ready, sir. Floor is yours.
Good afternoon. This is the budget for the Maryland Independent College and Universities Association Higher Education Facilities Grant Program. On the screen, you can see that the budget is $13.5 million for grants to 4 institutions. This program provides funding to Maryland's private colleges and universities to assist with the cost of capital improvements. Exhibit number 1 on page number 3 is a 10-year funding history of the program, including the FY24 allowance. You can see how that funding has been broken down among member institutions. And then on page number 4 begins the discussion of the 4 grants that are included in the budget in FY 2024. The first is $5 million to Johns Hopkins University for renovations to its School of Education building. The second is for a $5 million grant to Loyola University for renovations to the Donnelly Science Center building to modernize laboratory and teaching spaces. The third grant is $2 million to Washington College for improvements to 4 buildings on campus, including the auditorium at the William Smith Hall, exterior renovations at the Miller Library, and other improvements to the Toll Science Center and Casey Academic Center. The fourth grant is $1.5 million to the Capital Technology University for renovations to laboratory spaces in 2 buildings. And the DLS recommendation is to concur with the allowance, and that concludes the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Quist. Thank you very much for that. Any questions for the analyst? Seeing none, President Power, I'm just going to turn over to you. I know you've got an excellent panel with you. So
thank you very much, Chair Zucker, members of the committee. I'm Matt Power, the president of MICURA, here on part of the fastest 5-person panel you've ever seen. We are very supportive of the governor's budget and thankful for what we received. We are requesting your assistance for another $1.5 million for each of the 4 projects that were before you today, for a grand total of $19.5 million. That said, I know that your chair wanted to start at 3 o'clock, so you have our witness list. We have members from each of the institutions that have 4 projects before you today. If you have any questions of any of the members, we're happy to take questions on the individual projects.
any questions for this panel? Well, we really appreciate your time, and just know that we're going to take all this very seriously. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
So committee, this is wrapping up our capital budget hearings. This is, I believe, the last hearings for this session, and I just wanted to thank each one of you for allowing me to be your teammate and all the hard work we're doing. So that concludes today's budget hearings on the capital budget, and stay tuned because we're going to be having voting in the next like 5-10 minutes. Thank you very much.